Hello?
Vito!
Yes.
Cue-Ball Carmichael. How are you, stranger?
What's going on, man?
How are you? Hey, listen, man, I got to tell you, thanks so much for jumping on here with us at the last minute. You know, I had you in the roster to get a hold of you this week anyway and try to get you on in November. We got you a little bit early tonight. I was telling the guys, you know, that you're very talented. You've had a great career. You've been at with a couple questions, and I was going to let my friend Zane Paisley go first, and then Will Huckabee, who's on here with us, go second, and I'll bring up the rear. No joke.
Well, Vito, thank you so much for coming on, for making your triumphant return to the Undisputed Wrestling Show. This will be your first time with Cue-Ball on the show, so I'm really looking forward to that conversation. But when you were on with Will and I and Rick Craig a few months ago, well, actually, it was I think in February. At the very end, you had mentioned that you were deaf. I'm not sure if it was in one ear or both ears, but can you please expand on that and how that affected your wrestling career?
Well, can I have a better intro than this?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot you love the big intros.
I thought you were going to give yourself an intro. You do the best one ever.
He does.
Yeah, but you guys just talk to me like I'm some like hot dog vendor on the street selling hot dogs outside the Buddy Landell, Memorial, Triumphant Cup. And, I'm like, just like some guy who sweeps the ring out and like a nobody,
okay.
But just so you guys know, I'm the Pavarotti of hard shots to the body. The Paisan who's got it going on. That fly Italian guy from SI. An ECW original, a two-time WCW champion, a member of the NYC and TNA, and the toughest man to ever wear a dress from the WWE, representing the FBI, the one, the only, Vito the Skull LoGrasso from Staten Island, New York, movie star from many bars, and who in the hell is The Rock, that B-plus movie fool? Now you guys can go.
Wow, that was incredible. There's nobody ever going to do that nearly as good as you, Vito, ever.
I'm telling you, know why? Because nobody has that kind of resume.
I'm telling you.
They'd have to lie.
You're exactly right. Plus, you're good on the stick.
I try to be good on the stick, but me watching Cue-Ball Carmichael, promos my whole career since you started out with Lou Thez way back in the 40s. I mean, I learned my craft. You know what I'm saying?
I do, sir. I understand. Hey, Vito, listen, if we can do this a little bit, because you're an old school guy who was trained hardcore. I know how you trained at your school. Could you talk a little bit about your training when you came up?
Well, when we came up, I mean, I was like one of the last guys that, if anybody doesn't know out there, I was trained by Johnny Rods. He turned out to be a WWE Hall of Famer. I trained at the world famous Gleason's Gym in Brooklyn. And, back then Johnny was just finishing out his career, and really, honestly, I was probably one of the last guys he was training with on a one-on-one basis, 4 days a week, bumps, repetition, learn your basics. I was lucky enough to go on the road with Johnny and wrestle him exclusively. And when you have a guy who wrestled for as many years as Johnny and wrestled the best and kind of like was the tester, the enforcer of the old WWF, and he's teaching you the ropes, you learn the business the right way. You learn how to wrestle. You learn how to take care of yourself. You learn the basics. And then, you have a good basis to go out and achieve great things if you take it seriously.
He was quite a taskmaster, wasn't he? I mean, put you through the paces?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was like, you had to learn how to wrestle from the bottom up. And if you didn't get up, you couldn't wrestle. And I used to say, if you don't know how to get up, how are you supposed to throw a clothesline? How are you supposed to do a drop kick? How are you supposed to do X, Y, and Z? So we spent a lot of time on the mat until I learned how to get up. And if you think about it, if anybody who's a wrestler, knows that if you're on the mat, you don't get to do anything unless you get up on your feet. And by the time you get up on your feet after you're wrestling for that long to fight, you're going to have a stamina problem. So, I mean, it was training, it was stamina, it was weight training, it was cardio, it was a whole bunch of things. Nobody does 500 squats before you go in and wrestle anymore. Nobody works out with weights before you go out and go in there and wrestle. The whole dimension of, the 2000 wrestling era is way different from, back in 1999, 2000. You're talking about 2015, and, 1999, 1990, when you started wrestling and learning in the 90s, when, men were men with men power and men strength and men bodies, whole different concept. I mean, when Ivan Koloff grabs a hold of your forearm and you never felt man power before, and he's in his 50s, you're like, wow. Or an S.D. Jones with a thick body, or a Cousin Luke, or a Bill Eadie just out of the WWE, WWF coming and wrestling on the independents, and you're wrestling against him. Guy like the Honky Tonk Man, the Warlord, the Barbarian, Haku. And you're talking about the Wild Samoans, the Iron Sheik, Nikolai Volkov. And then that's just on the indies. But then when you go to the Fed, back then, and I'm wrestling Bret Hart's, I'm wrestling the Bulldog, the Boss Man, the Undertaker, Typhoon, Tatanka, and you're wrestling on TV at that time, and you're wrestling and gaining this experience. A lot of guys have the misconception of, oh, you're a jobber, hey, you're doing this. But if it wasn't for those matches, I wouldn't have got that experience, that type of teaching on how to be a pro and make it in the industry, because those guys took the time to teach me. It wasn't like they beat me up. I was one of the very, very few, elite few, who had offense back in the day. And I looked like I was a contract guy.
Yep. And, I think that your experience there probably helped you when you went to WCW, because you had the tag team titles twice, right?
Had the tag team titles twice. And what people don't realize is my very first TV match was against beautiful Bobby Eaton in WCW.
Wow.
And you're talking about the Alabama Jam, Lex, Paul Heyman as an announcer at WCW, doing my match, meeting the Steiners when they were first coming up, Lex when he was just finished and tagging with Sting, the Steiners, the Legion of Doom. You're talking about all those guys, and you're like, and Ric Flair, I believe, was champion at the time. You're talking to Tommy Riches, and I think the Rock and Roll Express was in the dressing room.
Right.
You're talking those days, like, the old school wrestling, like from WCW, and then I shoot from there to go to WWE, to WWF TVs, and being a New Yorker, your dream was to be in the WWF. You didn't think of WCW because you weren't in Atlanta or Florida, boy.
Right.
So you were like, okay, I did this. But then when in retrospect, here I am having a full match with beautiful Bobby Eaton, who was probably one of the best at the time. And I believe he was a former WCW champion. I'm wrestling against him. And, I forget who he was tagging with at the time. Who was his tag team partner? What was his, tag team?
Do
you remember?
Was it Stan?
I think it was Stan Lane. Yeah.
Stan Lane, right?
Yeah, I think it was, and I think maybe Jim Cornette was their manager at one time.
Yeah, he was.
But you're going
exactly right. Yep.
And you're talking about going deep, and I think it was at the time when Bobby was going singles, and I came on in a full German gimmick. The whole hat, the whole 9 yards, and they let me go on TV. And then, once I did that, and then I went to WWE, and then they let me do that on TV also. And I actually did the Heil Hitler. You're talking about like, hey, I'm just an enhancement guy, and here I am getting full stretch. Go ahead, kid, go do your thing. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I think, you have a lot of respect in the business, and I'm sure you did back then because you represented yourself, I think you were smart, you were trained well. I grew up in upstate New York and watching wrestling in the 70s. Unpredictable Johnny Rodz was one of my favorite wrestlers because, you can tell he could have had his way with a lot of those guys in there if he'd have wanted to. He was a tough cat. Of course, got to meet him later in life, and, you can't get trained by anybody any better than that. He wrestled every star that was in the 60s and 70s. And then he's training you, and you're following in his footsteps. And in the 90s, you're wrestling all these stars, either at WWE or WCW. You look at a guy and you see his pedigree, and you see, how good he is in the ring. And then you look back at his career, and it's usually a definite reflection on who he's been with. And you had, the list of guys you've been in the ring with is staggering.
You're talking about my first indie show, and you're talking about walking in the dressing room, and who walks in? The Wild Samoans, Nikolai, Ken Patera, the Iron Sheik, S.T. Jones, Cousin Luke. You're talking Bill Eadie. And I'm sorry if I'm missing a few guys, but you're talking those guys at that time were just coming off TV.
Right.
And you're talking about, gassed up big men, and the Samoans were thick. S.T. Jones was thick. Nikolai, and you're looking at the Ken Patera.
Yeah.
Ken Patera was on the card. The strongest man in the world, Olympics.
Yeah.
And here I am, some trainee of Johnny Rodz, and I'm looking at these guys, and I'm like, shit, man, I know I'm tough, but I ain't got a chance against these guys.
Yeah, and a lot of guys don't know, but the Iron Sheik could have tied your asshole in a knot. You know what I mean? He was a tough man. True story.
No, but you look at that lineup, and that's when. And the guys forget. Everybody says, oh, this is a shoot, that's a shoot, this is a shoot. You don't know nothing about a shoot unless you get in the ring with somebody who's a legit tough guy from that era.
Right.
Because that's when men were men. You didn't cry. You didn't write emails. You didn't complain. You didn't do a friggin' press release. You went in there and handled business. And I don't think anybody ever realized, if you really look at the statue of what's going on, you talk about a Buzz Sawyer, Jim Duggan match, and them guys didn't like each other, and those were two rugged country boys.
Oh, yeah.
And if you ever watch one of those matches, you'd be like, oh, my God. That's like the first trip to Japan, and the first match I'm watching with Kevin Sullivan, who was on the tour. And I'm watching Stan Hansen and Scott Norton in Ribera, and I'm watching that for the first time, and I'd never seen Japanese wrestling. And I said, what the hell is that? Is it Vito? You got to know how to fight over here. So you're going to do that. It's going to be a long tour.
Oh yeah,
and I was like, holy yeah. Reality check set in.
Crazy. Well, you came up. The way you came up is really similar to the way guys came up in the territories. There would be a new guy trained by one of the boys that had been around for a long time. That was a veteran, and he would bring him in and he would work him for his first 6-8 matches. And then he was surrounded by veterans, guys like you were surrounded with. So every night when he wrestled, he learned. It was school in session from bell to bell. And that has gone completely out the window. You might be one of the last guys that rode that train, but that was the territory train. And if you look at the people that you were working with, those were all territory guys. So you got it sort of second generation, man.
You're talking about learning something and then going the last of the territories. And, when I went to Puerto Rico, and then I went to Japan, and then I went to the Dominican Republic with a guy named Jack Veneno in a territory that was almost closed. And then you're talking about going to Memphis, wrestling in the Memphis Coliseum and the first Memphis Memory shows, being in one of the hottest angles with the Gilberts and the Dream Machine and the Boogie Woogie Man. And here I come in as a German, and I'm right there with them and the Moondogs. And you're talking about being the first match in that and on that card and learning about history, and then going back to Puerto Rico and wrestling there for 3-4 years straight, going to All Japan, looking at a guy in green tights and saying, man, who the hell you think you're laughing at? You pin him in an All Japan Battle Royal, you find out it's Misawa, and you and they come to you afterwards and say, Vito, great night. There you go, you're in the main event, and then you go pin our Triple Crown winner. Way to go. Needless to say, I got heat for that, but Baba laughed and he thought it was great. I didn't know who he was. He kept laughing at me. I said, look at this asshole in the green tights. I'll whoop your ass. I'm for the Skull Von Crush, man. Come on. And that's a true story. True story.
Oh yeah, that's, and I've told people this before. I mean, if you look back at careers, I mean, you really went everywhere. You WCW, WWE, WWF, I mean, ECW, Puerto Rico, Japan. I mean, you honestly have been everywhere. You're talking about hitting the last of the Ottawans and the European, wrestling in Hanover and the Schützenplatz and doing an Iron Man title. You're talking about the opening of XWF. You talk about, the NWE. I mean, I have covered everything and been everywhere. And when people say, they look at it and they turn their nose up at it, you just say, you wish you could have a quarter of what I did and call it your whole career. And I tasted every friggin' nook and cranny of the earth. But it's a different time now. It's a different era. You get paid to train. You go to developmental. You hope to find a good wrestling school today, somebody who will train you, who has credentials. And, it's sad to say, but those days are way gone and over, and the wrestling business has changed, 150 degrees. Yeah, it has. You're exactly right. Hey, let me ask you a question. You brought up Otto Wanz. Did you ever get a chance to wrestle him?
I never got a chance to wrestle him. I got up, and here's a true story, people. Time difference from New York to Germany and overseas. I got up at 4:00 in the morning just to call that man and beg him to let me come down there to live in one of the trailers, $600 a week to live in Germany, just like Owen Hart did, and just like a lot of the other guys did. And I never got that opportunity, But there was a gentleman by the name of Tony St. Clair. He's a very famous wrestler in Europe, and he had just retired the year before. And very legendary guy, just on the same page like Steve Regal, Finlay, Otto Wanz.
Right.
And Tony St. Clair watched me wrestle. I just came over. I just came out of WCW, and I came for my first tour there. It was just after 9/11. This man was so inspired by watching me wrestle and having the heel intensity. Guy came out of retirement to wrestle me at the show in a hardcore match.
Wow. Hey, he was no joke either. He had a lot of stroke. He could get you working. He could get you fired.
I'm still friends with him and his wife today.
Awesome.
His wife believes in the wrestling business. And when I bloodied him up, his wife came at me in the crowd and wanted to scratch my eyes out.
That's awesome.
And I can honestly say Christina Gregory is one of my true friends from Germany. We still talk, send Christmas cards to each other. And Tony St. Clair was always a gentleman, always, anytime I was in town or anytime he got me work, it was always a great time. And, when a guy like that respects you and comes out of retirement and say, man, this young guy got me tingling. I think I'm going to come out and I'm going to give this I'm going to give it another dance.
Yeah.
And the guy put me over.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's being a total 100% pro, giving you a rub. he had so much respect for you. That's crazy, man. That's a good, yeah, like I said, you have an amazing history in wrestling. Listen, our buddy Drew Skills just joined us on the Undisputed Wrestling Show on AngryMarks.com. Drew, do you have any questions for my pal Vito?
I don't, man. I just got on. It was great to hear what you were talking about and the different things you did. I don't know what anyone else has already asked you, but it's great to hear some of that stuff, man. You definitely, as Q touched on, man, that pedigree is something that the majority of the guys in the business now would kill to have a quarter of.
And I can tell you.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, when you had your school in Florida, you were one of the few guys that I referred guys to. I mean, I just didn't do it. I didn't, I wasn't comfortable with it. There's a couple places now I do, but yours was the primary place because I knew your pedigree and I believed in what you were doing. Zane.
Yeah, you know what? And when you have your own school, okay, and this just goes for guys out there who come from that kind of era, and you've been around. And this is not about balking orders. It's not about doing roles or showing you what to do and what's, how to do things. I got in there and I weight trained with the guys. I did roles with the guys. I wrestled with the guys. My concept of training guys was teaching them MMA, teaching them how to box, and teaching them how to wrestle. So 3 days of training, we had 3 different sessions. I made these guys box.
Right.
No lie. I boxed. If there was 5 guys, we boxed 3 rounds each. I boxed 15 rounds.
Wow.
I boxed everybody.
Wow.
Right. If there was amateur night where we were wrestling, we amateur wrestled. And I used to tell the guys, listen, I don't care how you do it. I said, I want you to fight for your life, and I want you to fight because these guys are going to try and wrap you up.
Right.
And little by little, these guys learned how to wrestle. When it came to MMA fighting, we never took each other's heads off. Okay, you got to lift your feet a little bit. You got to kick. And I taught them how to kick. I taught them how to throw punches. We did heavy bag drills. We did speed bag drills. We did it all. And my concept of today's wrestler, you have to be well-rounded to be able to be a complete athlete in the sport of professional wrestling. And little by little, these guys learn how to pro wrestle, right? To where guys who said they were pro wrestlers would come to my school. Hey, can I come for a workout? Sure, no problem. Come on in. We're doing kettlebell throws. We're doing push-ups. We're doing squats. Guys who said they were pros, they were throwing up. Hey, man, how long have these guys been wrestling? I said, they're not wrestlers. He said, what do you mean they're not? I said, they're trainees. These guys never wrestled in a match? I said, no. I said, I won't let them wrestle. They're not ready. He says, but I'm over here throwing up, and these guys are in tip-top superior shape. That they were blowing anybody's doors off. And we finished up a weight training program. We used to have to rep 225 after our workout.
Oh, my God.
Everybody got on the bench. I said to the guys, how are you supposed to lift a 300-pound man if you can't bench 225?
True story.
But it's the truth.
It is the truth.
If you think about it, and in essence, if you can't bench 225 when you're gassed, how are you supposed to lift him at the finish of a match and finish the match and be able to turn him over, place him properly, and go into your finish if you can't do a slam?
You're exactly 100% correct, man. Exactly. Hey, Vito, I gotta ask you about my favorite Vito LoGrasso wrestling school story. And this really hit me, man. And I said, I already knew you got it. There's no question there. But I said, this guy is a man who cares. And that was the kid that his training was finishing his college homework so he would pass his class.
Say that again?
The kid who at training you helped him do his college math homework, I think it was.
Yeah, we did homework.
Yeah, well, but the way you told the story is that this kid had to pass his class and he didn't get it. And he was frustrated, and you asked him what was going on, and he told you, instead of being a dick, you sat down and you helped him get it, and learn it so he can pass his class. And to me, when you put that out there, I was like, man, where are these guys that care? They not just care about making you a professional wrestler and being able to protect yourself and protect the business and take care of the guy you're in there with and all the other good stuff, but to be able to care about a person in this business that you've accepted in this business at any level and to care about him enough to do something like that told me everything I need to know about you as a person, man. I was sold. I'm done.
Hey, listen, he came in, he wasn't feeling good, and he says, I said, what's the matter? He says, man, I'm having a problem with my math class. I can't figure it out, and, if I don't pass, I can't come. I said, all right. I said, how about if we do math today instead of training? He says, you're going to help me with math. I said, yeah. I said, I'll help you as best I can. I said, let's try and do this. So I sat down, and our training session was math. Guy passed his class, and his mother came to the school. She even got me a little gift. Not that it matters, but, she was appreciative because I took the time with her son. And, and like any time any of my students had something going on, whether if they did, I had one guy who did a fundraiser for his girlfriend who passed away, and I went down and I signed autographs trying to help raise money. And then, he had a couple brothers who were, troublesome. Right. So I used to have them come in for some free classes and whatnot and do stuff like that. And, I had another guy, a friend of a friend who wanted to get on, The Biggest Loser. And if everybody remembers that promo I did in that video that circulated,
I do.
Where I yelled at some big, heavy, fat kid.
Yep.
And everybody thought, what a horrible human being. How could he do that? Well, people don't know that guy did that video. I said, come and do this and we'll get you on The Biggest Loser. And that video was specifically done to get him on that show so he could lose weight and come to try and be a pro wrestler.
Yep. I remember the story. I
saw the video. Did everybody scrutinize me and mock me and call me the ruthless, meanest son of a bitch on the face of the earth? Absolutely. But then if you don't know what's going on,
right,
I appreciate you being a fan of mine for believing what I put out on tape. I made you believe. That makes me a great pro.
That's right. That's right. But you know what you did? You took a lot of heat for that. And I knew what was up with it. But, people are quick to judge. They don't know anything about you, but they'll judge it from something they don't have all the information on. Unfortunately, that's the world.
It's like anything else. And I'm going to put this out there. Like, a lot of guys I know I'm the front person on this concussion lawsuit thing.
Correct.
A lot of people have their opinions. I've been scrutinized. My family's been scrutinized. Everybody has something to say. But you know what, people? Hogan, Roddy Piper, Jesse Ventura, guys like that tried to get a union, tried to get benefits, and they tried to get things for the boys for a long time. And maybe it wasn't the right time and the right era, but because times have changed and just the way things are done have changed, now is the right time. And right. You know what? I might not be a Hulk Hogan. I might not be a Jesse Ventura. I might not be a Roddy Piper. But I'm a step below them guys, and there's nobody you could say that I'm not. I might not have made the money they made, but I made a notch below, when people talk about, what you stand up for, hey, I'm standing up for the guys who have these problems. And you know what? I'm glad I did it, because when you look at the wrestling business today and how it was back in the day and how it is now, today is a very ugly business and it's very nasty. And the stuff that goes on behind the scenes takes away from the good that you can do in the ring. And yes, guys have problems. Yes, there's a lot of things that go on. You know what, people? I have the medical records that back up everything I'm saying. I can't make that up. I didn't know I had this because I wasn't educated and because the company did not educate me on what I had, I've never been knocked out. I've never been off my feet. But I've been punched in the face an awful lot of times. And you know what? And the best way to explain it is when people get in a car accident and their body's jerked around, you know, you're like, oh my God, and they have to go to months of therapy. Well, Vito LoGrasso body was in a car accident every day for many, many, many years.
That's right.
And you think about it, my body took a hell of a bunch of abuse. I used to laugh at guys for punching me in the face. And I used to make them mad. They used to hit me harder. And I used to laugh at them even more. Guys tried to take me on. They couldn't beat me. You know, but you talk about being that guy in the ring, being that piece of metal they're trying to bend, you know. And then years afterward, they say, hey, well, you have this and you have TMJ of the jaw. Well, what the hell is that? Well, that's wear and tear of the jaw. That's from being punched in the face for 25 years. I said, oh, okay, it's nice to know. Hey, you have a hearing loss. I said, well, how the hell did I get that? Well, that's from being punched in the face for 25 years. And then I just found out I have bone spurs on my neck. Well, I didn't know that. It's from wear and tear on, you know, your back and everything.
Sure.
But you're not tested when you're in the big company. You're not tested during your years of working. So you don't know you're occurring these things. So when you look at it today and people say you're a private contractor, well, if I'm a private contractor, federal law says I should be getting workman's compensation, but I'm not getting it.
Right.
Well, if I'm an employee of the company, but you're saying I'm not an employee, how is it that I have, you know, you have a wellness policy and then you have a college fund and then you have an alumni page. But if you're a private contractor, why am I allowed to have these items or these programs available to me if I'm not an employee? Now, if it makes sense to anybody out there, when you're talking, they're double talking. How come Vito LoGrasso is on the WWE network? They just posted a whole bunch of matches of me on their network. How come I'm not making any royalties on that?
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm such a piece of crap and I'm this and I'm that, making money on me.
Absolutely.
So when you look at it, fellas, and everybody out there is listening to this show, everything is not cut and dry like you think. And it's not, Vito's greedy. Vito don't have. No, I have money. I save my money. Yes, I live in a nice home. Yes, I'm not destitute. I'm not a drug addict. I'm not broken down. I'm not anything like that. I live a normal life with a wife, you know, and we have a dog. We have a dog, puppy. And you know what, people? Wrestlers are people too. We're human beings, and everybody has their life and their crosses to bear. You know, how many people go out there that know about, you know, what goes on behind your own closed doors or what goes on in Cubo Carmichael's house or anybody else or the Vito LoGrasso house? You know, nobody knows. But they all assume. Everybody looks at Daniel Bryan. Oh, Daniel Bryan. Oh, he's hurt. He had a concussion. Oh, my God, he's been doing it for 15 years. Well, I've been doing it for 25, and I did it with bigger and better stars than him. CM Punk, who showed the WWE, hey, listen, they're lying. I have an infection. Bob Holly had a staph infection, almost lost his arm.
True story.
People forget that. When Eddie Guerrero used to be laying on the table, and you'd say, hey, Doc, Eddie don't look too good. You got to let him go because the WWE wants him to perform. They didn't have a wellness policy back then, but the following week he died. And I said, Doc, we just had this conversation. He said, Vito, we can't really talk about it. And then the doctor was fired.
Yeah.
You know? Chris Benoit.
Was that Dr. Ramascavage?
Go ahead. Dr. Rios.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
All right. But then you have Chris Benoit. Everybody craps on, everybody shits on, and everybody mocks. Hey, you know what? Guy has some serious problems, but you guys don't know. You look on the outside. But hanging with the guy and being with the guy and knowing the guy, You know, looking at Eddie tributes for a year, that has an effect on a person. Going through working night after night after night, and you're dealing with stuff, and there's no rest, and you have a family, you have this, you have that, has a toll on this person. It'll make anybody snap. You don't think Vince McMahon has moments where he breaks up his house, his mansion? Or you don't think fights where two writers, I won't name their names, I don't want to embarrass them, where two writers get into a fight over SmackDown and they beat up Vince's brand new limousine? That they had a lot. What?
I just wanted to say, you know, as far as the lawsuit goes, you know that I've supported you from day one, and I've told people unless you walk in his shoes or our shoes, you have absolutely no reason to judge. And independent wrestlers that are saying, oh, well, you know, you get what you asked for. You've never been up there. You never worked that schedule. You've never been dropped on those rings before Vince changed them in '99. They were stiff as a board. It felt like a deck. You never had that happen. But I think what people forget is, and I've pointed this out many times, is that Vito LoGrasso is not broke. He's not destitute. He was good with his money. He's secure. He has a beautiful wife. He has a nice life. He has a nice home. He is not doing this for him. This is a class action suit. This is going to protect the guys that are under 35 more than it's going to protect us. It's not. It's going to, maybe we'll get some health care out of it or something. But this is really being done for the betterment of all the other wrestlers that fall into the category of the guys that are out there now taking the abuse, and the guys that are just starting to take it because there may be some preventive measures and some testing so that they don't get to the point where you and I are, where we're getting our car and drive out of our driveway and we have no idea where we were going. You know, people don't understand when you wake up in the morning and you walk out and you look at your daughter, your son, you have to think for a minute to remember what their name is. People don't know this because they weren't dropped on their head. They didn't snap their neck. They didn't get whiplash every night, but they'll sit there and they'll judge. And what kills me is you'll get a guy who wrestles once a month on the indies that'll sit there and try to judge you when you used to wrestle 250 nights a year. So I support you 100%. I know why you're doing it. I know you're doing it more for the boys than you're doing it for yourself. And I think that you're doing a tremendous thing that needed to be done. And I have amazing respect for what you're doing in the position that you've put yourself in, because in doing this to help everybody else out, you've put yourself up there to take the hits.
No, it's go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. V. I apologize. I wanted to say, just get this in real quick. As a indie wrestler, I would like to thank you for what you're doing for the boys and stuff. I have in no way wrestled nowhere near as long as you are, Q Ball, or even Drew. But I've had my fair share of concussions and stuff, and I completely wholeheartedly agree with everything that you're doing and stuff. And thank you for what you're doing for the boys and for future generations of wrestlers.
I appreciate it, but you know what, fellas? You know, and when you're coming up, and this is something that people don't understand, you know, when you're coming up and you're a wrestler and you're wrestling men, you're talking it's a men's sport. It's a man's game. You're not going in there and, you know, you're not doing it to play tiddlywinks. The way your pedigree is, are you hurt? No. Did any bother you? No. Anything, no. All right, kid. You're all right. Listen, we'll have you come back tomorrow. Even though you could be bleeding on the inside, nothing. You sit there and you say no. That's the way you're brought up in the business. You're brought up to be tough. And the tough guys are the ones who got, like, you know, you talk about having the problems. Hey, I have headaches every day. You know what I mean? I have mild headaches every day. You know, people say, well, how could you have headaches every day? I say, I do. You know, people say, well, you know, how could you be deaf? Well, when you get knocked in the ears enough and you have cauliflower ears and you get kicked in the face, yeah, you tend to, you know, you might lose a little something. How many times was my brain been scrambled, but I didn't know, because every time I got rocked, I just, you know, I'm Vito LoGrasso. I'm brought up from my father in Italian heritage in Staten Island in Brooklyn. You don't lose. You don't lose a fight. You friggin' shake it off and you go forward. You don't cry. There's no crying. When you're a bouncer and you're coming up and you're bouncing in all the wise guy clubs, you don't lose a fight. You lose, you're out. Your rep is done. But when you win and people come in the club and they know you're the man, and when you back in the heyday when I could pick up 2 grown men at the same time and pick them up and throw them out a front door of a nightclub, and both of them get up and you're ready to go, and then the captain of the police department, the precinct, 121st precinct, say, hey, you need to go back in the club. And I said, who the hell are you? So I'm the police captain. I said, I got this. I said, all right, no problem. But when you walk back in the club and people look at you like you got 3 heads, you made your name in the neighborhood, they don't message you, they don't come back. Hey, Vito, you did a good job. You know, I appreciate it. Thank you for looking out. Okay. I know I got a job for life in that club and every other club I want. And then I made a name for myself on the street. But you have to be tough. And that's the way you grow up. You're tough. There's no crying. And you know what? Back in the days when you did WWF TV tapings in 91, you went up against the Legion of Doom, the Samoan SWAT team, the Hakus, the Warlords of Barbarians, all 300 pounds, the Bret Harts when he first won a title. You're talking about guys who were on these special vitamins, and they were like, you know, muscular men, and they were just enhanced beyond belief, every one of them. And you're some kid coming up, and you're like, man, I'm taking these shots, and they dumping you on your head. Take the Legion of Doom bump and fall on your neck. Yeah. It's on the WWE Network. Thank you. It's okay, watch it. With Bret Hart putting you in the sharpshooter, but you know, because adrenaline is running hard and he has to look good, he's got to kick it in a few notches. It's okay because you gained your respect, you know, and you know, there's no way to go with it. But now today, because you have all the emails and you have these avenues to fight the grievance, nobody books me on wrestling shows anymore. Not for a manager, not for a referee, not for nothing, because they're all afraid. They all say, oh, Vito's blackballed, or, you know, we don't talk to Vito, or like, you know, my wrestling friends, who my buddies still talk to me. But as far as doing wrestling business, everybody's like, you know, they don't want to touch me because they think, oh my God, if Vince finds out that he's on our show, he won't look at me and look at my promotion. Well, you know what, people? He ain't calling you after 5 years. If you've been doing the indies for 15 years and he hasn't called you, he's not calling you. Yes. And Vito LoGrasso doing your little itty bitty show, you know, I only enhance the show. I'm only the hottest name in wrestling because I'm not wrestling and because I have this concussion thing. But invite me to a show. Pronounce that I'm going to be at your show. I'm going to get in the ring. You see Vince's Stooges run there. You see the press run there. You see the internet run there just to see if I'm going to wrestle. Because that's what they're sitting and waiting for, because they want to know. Because if they do that, they jump out of this lawsuit.
Yeah.
And you know what, fellas? You got to book me to see what's going to happen. I can't reveal it. Kayfabe. So, I mean, you take it for what it's worth, wrestling fans, and you take it for what it's worth, all of Vince's Stooges who are listening right now. You know, I'll give you a little bit of an insight on the case. WWE filed 3 motions for dismissal and dismissal for discovery. They got overruled by the courts. Next hearing is for discovery. Discovery means they have to reveal all the records. They grant discovery. That means Vince has to go on and witness stand, and they has to have a deposition. So if the judge already denied all their motions, what does that tell you, people? It must be real. When Stephanie McMahon is selling all her stock, why is she selling it, people? Because something's going to come down. Daniel Bryan is their moneymaker. Why isn't he in the ring yet? Because it's going to come down, people. You have a concussion movie coming out with the WWE guys who are the ones hiding and scamming to hide the concussion syndrome, right? And they're in the movie, and they're WWE's concussion guys, but it's documented that they're fugazi. What does that tell you, guys? You can't lie about everything, my saying.
Right.
So somebody's got to tell the truth. And Cue Ball could tell you from his experience, and everybody else who has Tracy Smothers and all the other guys. Listen, it'll come out and we'll be victorious. If I have a settlement out of this, hey, good for me. I earned it. If I get a settlement for everybody else who joined the lawsuit, hey, good for me. I helped them earn it. But they put their time in for it. And what is my legacy going to be in wrestling? I'll be the Jimmy Hoffa of wrestling. I got a union together.
That's right. As close as it'll ever be, brother.
And that really, it is.
It is.
It is. And you really think about it. Jimmy Hoffa fought for a union. Yep. Jimmy Hoffa went through a lot of crap. But Jimmy Hoffa made that union. Remember Fist. I mean, he might be in the Verrazano Bridge. He might be in Giant Stadium. We don't know.
Right.
Just hoping the lawsuit comes out. They're not building a stadium. That's all I can say. I don't know.
That's great. Vito, listen, it was great talking to you. This is the Undisputed Wrestling Show at Angry Marks Network. You got anything to plug?
All I want to plug is go to the Buddy Landell Memorial Show.
Thank you.
Let's do something for a good cause. I know Cue Ball promised to bring me in a limo and a flight and a hotel, but he hasn't done anything yet. So if you guys have any influences on bringing me in, get with Cue Ball on Facebook, inbox him to death.
Oh, you son of a gun.
Right, but everybody really, in all seriousness, if you can get to the Buddy Landell show and help out a good family. Buddy helped me when I was coming up, and he helped a lot of guys in wrestling. If you guys listen to the Cue Ball show and some of his affiliates, if you guys are looking for a good wrestling school, Cue Ball just opened up a Dynamite facility. I know it's just getting off the ground, but if you give it a chance, you got somebody who has some credentials. And if anybody knows Axel Rotten, don't listen to him on Facebook. He has problems. You can tell him I said that too, so it's good.
I love you, Vito.
Hey, Vito.
All right, guys, listen. Yes, sir.
Vito, when we have more time with you, can we talk about Billy Jack Haynes sometime? Not tonight, but sometime when you come back on with us.
I'd be more than happy to talk about whatever you'd like. And Billy Jack Haynes is definitely eccentric. I'll say he's eccentric.
Well, we really appreciate you coming back on with us.
Yeah, thanks for
all right, listen.
Appreciate it, buddy.
All right, listen, you guys have a good night, and thank you for having me on the show.
Tell your wife I said hey. Talk to you soon.
All right, bye-bye.
Well, Q, that was a great talk with Mr. Vito LoGrasso. Obviously, you guys go way back. We could talk with him for hours and hours if we wanted to.